Hi, welcome to the online course on responding to climate risks in agriculture and natural resources management. Today we will tackle Module 1, Climate Change Adaptation as a Framework for Risk Reduction in a Changing Climate. And our first lecture under this module is why policymakers should care. We want to talk about four things for this first lecture. First, why is climate changing? Second, what are the evidences of climate change? Third, how will climate change in the future? And finally, what are the impacts of climate change? So let's go right into it. First of all, why is climate changing? As mentioned here by this article in Time, why should we be worried, be very worried? Well, it all starts with understanding the role of greenhouse gases. Now, we know that the atmosphere is covered with so-called greenhouse gases. These are gases like CO2, methane, CH4, N2O, and they are very important because they keep our atmosphere warm. Without greenhouse gases, our planet will be 30 degrees hotter than, or 30 degrees cooler than what we are experiencing right now. However, if greenhouse gases increase, they will tend to warm the atmosphere more and more. Think of it like a blanket. If you had one blanket, that's all right. But if you have more than one blanket, then pretty soon it will begin to be hotter and hotter. And indeed, that is what we're doing. We have been increasing greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, primarily by the effect of fossil fuel emissions and also by the destruction of our forests, especially tropical rainforests. Studies by the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has shown that the three major greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, CO2, methane, and N2O, have risen dramatically in the last 150 years. You will see in these graphs that in the last 10,000 years, the concentrations of these gases have been more or less stable. But in the last 150 years, and this is this part, also shown here, we have seen the dramatic increase of CO2, methane, and N2O. So all of these greenhouse gases have increased since the start of the so-called Industrial Revolution in the 1850s. Now second, let's talk about what are the evidences. How do we know that the climate is indeed changing? First of all, look at the global surface temperature of the world. And as you can see from here, the temperature of the planet has been increasing at an ever-increasing rate. This is the red line is the global average from 1860s, whereas the yellow line is the average over the last couple of decades. And you can see that the slope of the line is getting higher and higher. In other words, it is getting hotter in the last few decades. Then look as well at the warming based on satellite measurements since 1979. Here we can see the surface, and then here the troposphere or the atmosphere, and you see that warming is everywhere at the surface except at some areas. Land warming is faster than ocean over the last 20 years, and the mid-troposphere or atmospheric warming is consistent with the warming of the surface of the Earth. Next, we also look at the water vapor over the oceans. And these are the precipitable or water that can become rain over the ocean. And the trend so far from 1988 to 2004 is that these are near zero or positive in most places. In fact, globally, there's more than 1% increase in the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere per decade. And this is in fact very consistent to a warming atmosphere. This is exactly what we would expect. If the Earth is warming, there will be more water vapor in the atmosphere. And here is a very dramatic scene showing melting of the glaciers or the ice mass in Greenland. This is 1992 melt, and this is 2002. And data shows that there is now, or the Greenland is now losing 20% more mass than it receives from new snowfall each year. In Africa, the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, Here showing the glaciers in 1976, and here it was in the year 2000. And you can see, again, the very dramatic loss of glaciers in Mount Kilimanjaro, again suggesting a warming atmosphere. Okay, third, how will climate change in the future? And here is the data from the IPCC report of 2007 showing the projections of air temperature from the year 2000 to the next 100 years. And here you can see that most models predict that temperature will increase globally by about 1 to up to 4 degrees centigrade. This may appear small, but remember, this is the global average. And even a 1 degree rise could have serious effects to our planet. Another important projections of the IPCC report is the rise of sea level. Here we see, again, using different scenarios and models, but almost all of them, or all of them, showing increasing level of the sea up to about 30 centimeters. Now in Southeast Asia, the ADB in 2009 released this study for 4 countries in the region showing the average temperature increase will rise, again, depending on the model. We have here the B2 model or the B2 scenario, and this is the A1 scenario. But under this high scenario, up to 5 degrees centigrade on the average, temperatures in these countries can rise. In terms of rainfall or precipitation, the model results is more ambiguous or less clear. We can see that some countries may experience more and less, and some countries will actually have much less rainfall in the next 100 years. So there is still a lot of uncertainty in terms of the direction of precipitation. Some countries having more, some countries having less. Now third, what are the impacts of climate change? What will happen as a result of a changing climate? Again, the ADB study in 2009 shows the following impacts. For agriculture, there may be a positive effect up to 2 degrees centigrade, but after that, there will be falling crop yields, loss of land due to sea level rise, and as well as delay in cropping, current cropping schedule. For water resources, there will be increasing number of people under water stress, increased water runoff, and decrease in water quality. For forest and natural ecosystems, there could be loss of small islands, coral bleaching, even at 1 degree centigrade warming, and at 3 degree warming, biodiversity loss, or even extinction of plants and animals. Health impacts are frightening as well. There could be outbreak of vector-borne diseases and increase in respiratory and cardiovascular diseases due to warming. And finally, extreme weather events such as heat waves, droughts, flooding, typhoons or storms could also increase in frequency and intensity as the planet warms. Here's another example focusing on rice, a very important crop to our part of the world. And as you can see from here, the yellow and green colors show loss of yield of 5% or more. And as you can see from the chart, most of Asia will decline in rice yields up to, or on the average, 27% loss of rice yields in irrigated rice. On the other hand, if we look at the rain-fed rice, the picture is, well, a bit more encouraging, less loss, but still, on the average, 12% will be lost as a result of global warming in the next 40 years. And as a result of all of this, the gross domestic product of our countries will suffer. Here's the data from the Asian Development Bank again. And as you can see from here, GDP can be lower by up to 6% in the year 2100 as a result of climate change. And so clearly, this is an issue that you as policymakers should be concerned about. We must act to address climate change. Otherwise, we will have so many adverse effects that it could affect our desire to reach our sustainable development aspirations. Well, the good news is we don't have just to wait for climate change to happen. In fact, we can adapt to climate change. And in fact, this is the whole rationale for this series of online lectures. Here, based on the study of the ADB, it shows the blue line, which is the cost of adaptation, whereas the red color or the green color shows the benefits of climate change adaptation. Here we can see that climate change adaptation will cost some amount of money as a percent of GDP, up to about 1% of GDP initially, but in the long term, the benefits of adaptation far outweighs the investment that we will pay for doing adaptation. And so the message is, it pays to adapt. If we adapt now, we will pay lower cost, and the benefits we will generate will be so much more in the future. And so I end this first lecture by challenging you, our policymakers, researchers, that let's address climate change. It is an important challenge of our time, and I trust that we will do all our best to address the challenge of climate change. Thank you.